Hi, welcome to the Examining a Paragon Insights Installation Learning Byte. I'm Gordon with the Education Services Department at Juniper Networks. Let's get started. After completing this learning byte, you will be able to examine a Paragon Insights installation. A Paragon Insights installation consists of a series of container applications that are managed by Kubernetes. And so in Kubernetes, you deploy pods. And so, for example, inside of a pod, you may have a single or multiple containerized applications that provide a particular service. This project also enabled me to learn Kubernetes. I'd worked a little bit with Docker, I understood containers, but I'd never used Kubernetes to manage them. And so when you install Paragon Insights, it is part of what's called the Paragon Automation Solution. And there's Paragon Pathfinder, Paragon Planner, and there's also Paragon Insights, which is the focus of this learning byte. And when you perform an installation of Paragon installation and say, I want to install Paragon Insights, you will get a series of pods that will contain containers that will perform Paragon Insights functions, right? There will be some common containers, no matter which Paragon automation application you choose to deploy, that provide things like storage and inter-process communication mechanisms, maybe an interface for you to manage these various components. So there'll be some common pods, common containers, but then you'll choose the individual Paragon automation components that you want to install and implement in your network. So that meant I had to learn Kubernetes. There are pods, there are containers in pods, and there's a lot of plumbing. And I didn't really, when I struggled to kind of get it all going, and I just didn't know all the parts. And so what really helped me was a Kubernetes utility called kubectl. It allowed me to view the pods, view the containers in the pods. And for me, what was important was the IP addressing and port information. I needed that to configure my devices. Where do I stream this telemetry? What ports, what addresses, where do I stream it to? How do I enable that? So it was key information just to let me learn the parts, understand the plumbing. It's a command line utility. You'll connect to the Kubernetes controller, your Paragon automation Kubernetes controller, and you'll enter the command. Now, it's a command line utility, and so there's options, and so this will be your learning curve. Well, what do I type, right? And a good place to start, get going, is just kubectl --help. It will list options. So, for example, you can do kubectl create. And then, well, what do I type now? Well, kubectl create --help will explain, okay, here's the create option. Here's the options you can enter, and here's how to retrieve data and the type of data that will be returned. And so this will be your learning curve. One of the most popular ones, the simplest one, and we're going to focus on this in this learning byte, is a kubectl get command. This is going to give you a lot of information. It's just going to help you understand your installation and give you important information. So I'm going to connect to my Kubernetes controller for my Paragon automation installation, and we'll run some kubectl commands. I've established a secure shell connection to the primary node of my Paragon automation Kubernetes cluster. So what does that mean to me? Let me show you some information we can gather. Remember, we're going to run the kubectl command, --help. I mentioned that just a few minutes ago, and this again will show you the options that you can enter for this utility. Now, one of my favorite ones, if I'm just don't really know all the parts, is I can run a kubectl get nodes command. And this gives me information about the actual Paragon Insights installation. And in the Kubernetes world, you will have what's called a controller node, and you will have a series of worker nodes. Now, in a normal environment, you would have multiple controller nodes. That's from the Department of Redundancy department, but this is a lab installation, so I can get away with that. But if I lose that controller node, I'm in a pickle, right? Because this controller node schedules pods to run on the worker nodes, right? So that's an important component. You'll have as many worker nodes as you need to get good performance for your application. But at least this gives me the IP addresses and which devices are playing which role here. Now, Kubernetes organizes pods into different namespaces. A useful command is a kubectl get namespaces. And it will show me the different namespaces that are part of my Paragon automation installation. And the reason I wanted to show you this is because the Paragon Insights pod are organized in the HealthBot namespace. The Paragon Insights was formerly named HealthBot. So if you're looking through documentation or something, you may see both names. You will see HealthBot throughout this installation. So that name is still used. And so if I wanted to see all of the pods, now this is going to be a lot of output. If I say get pods and I do a $A, it will show all of the pods that are part of this installation. And again, they're organized by namespace. Here's the Ceph namespace and the pods that are included. This is the Paragon Pathfinder components. And then here are our HealthBot, all the pods that are part of the HealthBot namespace. Now that's a lot of output because I did -A. I said, show me all the pods for all of the namespaces, right? So the namespace component is important because if I want to get pods for a particular namespace, I can use the -N option, and let's focus on just the pods related to HealthBot or Paragon Insights. And let me scroll up a little bit to get to the top of this output. And here's the pods, right? And you'll see in the ready column the number of containers applications that are in each pod. So for example, the Alerta pod has one container and thankfully it's running. Now, one thing I want you to notice about pod names is here's an Alerta, right? Well, that's consistent, but then you'll see a dash. If I could get that highlighted correctly, you'll see a dash. And then this is a random value. Each time this pod is restarted or launched, that value changes. It will still be called Alerta, but what's after the dash changes. And that's important because there are various kubectl commands that you'll run where you'll need to know the name of the pod. And so it may be different than it was yesterday because the pod's been relaunched. Keep that in mind. And every pod will have a unique ID value at the end of its name. So there's all of the pods. When you install HealthBot, I get a list of all the pods, what their names are they running, how many containers are in each pod. Pods provide services. So let me replace the pods, kubectl get pods with kubectl get service. Let me see the services provided by the pods that are running in the HealthBot namespace. This was great information for me because, for example, Paragon Insights is going to ingest some telemetry. I need to provide the clients the devices I want to stream telemetry from. I need to configure them, and so I need addresses and I need ports. For example, Insights can ingest syslog, so I can configure my network devices. Hey, stream your syslog information to Paragon Insights. We can store that, analyze that, report on that. But where do I send it to? I need the address. Well, in the Kubernetes world, a pod is assigned an address, an IP address. And so that's how the pods communicate. The different services can communicate with each other by literally sending traffic to IP addresses, but some pods can be accessed externally from the Paragon Automation cluster. For example, the syslog UDP pod has an external IP address. This is what I'm going to configure my host to stream their syslog data to. This is the syslog server. Send it over there because at UDP port 514, this service is listening, and any traffic sent to that IP address would be forwarded to, this is the address of the pod. Right? You wanted to stream SNMP, the SNMP management station, it's 192.168.1.110. Stream it to UDP port 162 there, we'll get it. I can ingest that, right? We have on Junos platform something that is called native telemetry provided by the Juniper telemetry interface. You can configure your Junos platforms to stream interface data and all kinds of telemetry to Insights, but you need to know the correct IP address, and you need to configure the streaming server. You have to configure that on the Junos devices. Send it to UDP port 4000 at this IP address, right? And so this really helped me get my installation up and running because I knew how to aim things correctly. How should I configure these values? So just these simple kubectl get pods, get service, get namespace, get nodes, these little simple commands that all started with kubectl get really helped me understand the parts. In this learning byte, we examined a Paragon Insights installation. Thank you very much.
Visit the Juniper Education Services website to learn more about courses. View our full range of classroom, online, and e-learning courses. Learning paths, industry segment and technology-specific training paths. Juniper Network's certification program, the ultimate demonstration of your competence. And the training community, from forums to social media. Join the discussion.